Now, I want to talk about sugar. Now, we all know that sugar is bad for us, but I'm going to show you why it's causing you to have low energy, why it's draining your energy slowly but surely. And I want to go over 5 reasons. So let's dive right in. Okay, so first off, what do you think the number 1 cause of inflammation is? That's right, sugar. Sugar creates inflammation. There's this term called glycation. What does glycation mean? Glycation is when you combine sugar with protein or fat. So if you eat a bunch of sugar, it will bind to some of these proteins and fats and actually change the structure of them, making them not work as well. Okay? So you can think of it like a lock and key. This is a protein. This is a key. They fit together perfectly and they work really well together. But if you add sugar to the equation, the sugar now binds to the key, covering up the key. So now the lock and the key cannot function properly, and this happens in every part of your body. So you can have glycation in your brain, you can have glycation in your heart, you can have glycation in your joints, your eyes, your kidneys, your liver. And so any part of your body where there are proteins that are supposed to be working at a very high level, this can negatively affect it. So the reason why sugar causes low energy is because it gets stuck in the system and it starts creating inflammation, especially in the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. The more sugar you eat, the more damage that occurs in the mitochondria. All right, next point. When you consume sugar, it depletes vitamin C. Why? Because you have to convert the sugar into another form, which is called its oxidized form, before your body can even use it. And this requires vitamin C. So if you don't have enough vitamin C in your diet, well, you're gonna have a problem with sugar, okay? So people that consume a lot of sugar usually need a lot of vitamin C, but the problem is they're not getting it from food. They're getting it from synthetic sources. So what you should do is just increase your vitamin C from food, sauerkraut, bell peppers, berries, things like that. Next point, sugar depletes B vitamins, especially B1. In fact, 25% of all diabetics end up having a deficiency in B1. So what does that mean? That means they have a problem with their nervous system. They can have problems with their muscles, especially the heart muscle. They can have digestive issues, okay? A deficiency in B1 can also affect your blood sugars too. So if you already have a problem with insulin resistance and you start depleting B1, it's going to make it worse. All right. Next point, sugar lowers your glutathione. Now, glutathione is the master antioxidant in the body. It helps you detoxify poisons, but it also keeps your immune system strong. So here you are eating sugar, right? You're depleting your glutathione. Next thing you know, you get sick, and what helps you fight off infections? Your immune system. So if you're lowering your immune system at the same time you're eating sugar, it could potentially kill you. In fact, it has in the past. Back in the 1918 flu pandemic, there were certain individuals that would survive the flu, but then they would end up dying from pneumonia, bacterial pneumonia, because their immune system was compromised. And guess what? Streptococcus pneumonia, which is a bacteria that can cause pneumonia and meningitis, loves sugar. So you can see how this could theoretically happen. You get the flu, you're stressed out, you have nutritional deficiencies, your immune system is compromised, and then this secondary infection comes in and kills you. And the interesting thing about this microbe is it's not just found in, sick people, it's actually found in our normal healthy throats. But it doesn't cause any problems until your immune system is compromised. So keep your glutathione levels high by consuming foods that are rich in glutathione like meats and seafood and cruciferous vegetables. All right, so that's the 4th point. Let's move on to number 5. You ready? Here it is. Sugar destroys the microbiome. What does that mean? Well, your gut has trillions of bacteria, and this bacteria, these microbes, are there to help you digest certain things that you cannot digest. If you didn't have them, you wouldn't be able to break down fiber and certain things in plants. You wouldn't be able to make certain neurotransmitters like serotonin, which is the happy hormone. You would have a depressed mood. You would have other mood disorders like anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, autism. All right, so many different things can occur when you don't have the right microbiome. And unfortunately, sugar destroys the good bacteria in your gut, which is very, very bad. And this is probably one of the reasons why most people are deficient in what's called butyrate. Butyrate is a compound made by the bacteria in your colon. And this is a very, very important substance. It decreases inflammation. It helps you balance your blood sugars. It helps decrease your risk of getting leaky gut syndrome. It also helps prevent cancer. There's been many studies on that. Now, the way you get butyrate is by eating fiber, okay? And the only way you can do that is if you have the bacteria to break down the fiber to make butyrate. So you can take butyrate as a supplement, but it won't have the same effect as when you make it yourself through the food that you eat. So to protect the microbiome, cut out the sugar, consume foods that have prebiotics and probiotics. Now, I just gave you 5 reasons why sugar slowly drains your energy. Well, there's another 6 reasons, which I'm going to share with you right now. Now, the first thing you need to realize is that sugar feeds cancer cells. Cancer cells love sugar. In fact, 60% of all the calories consumed by cancer cells come from sugar. So what does that mean? That means if you feed cancer cells sugar, they're going to grow. And there's been many studies showing this, including a study done on mice. They took away the sugar in the diet, and the tumor size decreased. Now the question is, why do cancer cells love sugar so much? Well, it's because they have a defective mitochondria, similar to someone that consumes too much sugar, okay? So the mitochondria is kind of like the control center for the cell, and it's the control center for growth and repair. So if that's damaged, you get damaged cells, you get precancerous cells, and eventually you get cancer. Now, one of the ways cancer cells get around this problem is they use something called fermentation to make energy. What is fermentation? Fermentation is basically converting sugar without oxygen, unlike the normal process where you would use oxygen. So you have aerobic respiration versus anaerobic respiration, which is fermentation. And guess what? You get a lot more ATP from aerobic respiration than you do from fermentation. So you can see how this could be a problem. You're trying to grow new cells, you're trying to repair tissues, but you do not have the energy to do it because you're using a very inefficient pathway to create energy. So if you want to starve off cancer cells, cut out the sugar. Instead, consume foods that help clean up the mess from sugar, like leafy greens, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, things like that. All right, next point, excessive sugar consumption increases oxidative stress. So we talked about the inflammation. We talked about the free radicals. Well, here we're talking about more free radicals. Free radicals are damaging to your DNA. They're damaging to your proteins and your lipids, and the way that you get rid of them is with antioxidants. So if you consume a lot of sugar, you're going to generate a lot more free radicals, which overwhelms your antioxidant capacity, and that is not a good place to be in. All right, next point. Sugar increases triglycerides. Now, triglycerides are a type of fat that's stored in your body, especially in the liver, and what happens is when you have excess sugar, it gets converted to fat. In fact, the body has a way of turning things into fat that it's never turned into fat before. So if you consume a lot of sugar, it could potentially turn protein into fat, and it can turn carbohydrates into fat, which is really, really bad. In fact, there's a condition where you have an accumulation of fat in your liver. It's called hepatic steatosis, and people with this condition don't even feel like they have a problem. They might have a little bit of fatty liver, they might have a little bit of extra fat around their belly button. Well, it turns out that a lot of people have this condition and they don't even know it. All right, next point, sugar increases visceral fat. What is visceral fat? Visceral fat is fat around your organs and the worst place you could possibly have fat. Why? Because it actually interferes with the organ. So you can have a lot of sugar, you can have a lot of fructose, and it gets stored as visceral fat, and that can put pressure on the liver. It can put pressure on the pancreas. It can put pressure on the stomach. It can put pressure on the intestines. and that is definitely not a good thing. All right, and the last point, sugar promotes insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is when your cells no longer respond to insulin. Why? Because you've had so much insulin stimulation from eating too many carbs and sugar. So it's kind of like if you stimulate a muscle too much, the muscle adapts and gets stronger. Well, guess what? Your cells can adapt as well. They can become resistant to insulin, which means you're going to have higher amounts of sugar in the blood, and you're going to have lower amounts of sugar in the cells, which means you're going to be craving more sugar, which means you're going to eat more sugar. And it's this vicious cycle. And the solution to this is to stop eating the sugar, start eating the right foods, which are anti-inflammatory, which include healthy fats, omega-3 fatty acids, things like that. Now, since we're talking about sugar, there's this one little known herb that can help reduce your cravings for sugar. And if you'd like to know what that is, I put it right here in this video. Check it out.